Okay, this is a reaction video. This is another one from Passport 2, American versus Germany Christianity, Our Culture Shocks with German Church. Now, I generally try, well, I don't necessarily avoid politics. I try not to do a whole lot on politics. There's a couple of political videos on my channel, but religion, my dad always told me to avoid politics and religion. And as discussion, look, because like I don't care what you are politically. I don't care what your denomination is religiously. But in this day and age we live in, if I came out and said that I was one thing and I'm not going to always, that's where the problem comes. But let me see what this is all about: American versus German Christianity, Our Culture Shocks with German Church.
The US and Germany both have deep roots and cultural ties to Christianity, but that definitely doesn't mean you have the same experience with Christianity in both countries.
Again, I'm oblivious to what goes on in the German church. I'm well aware of what goes on in the American church.
Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I am Donnie, and along with my wife Aubrey, we are two Americans currently living in Germany with our baby, sharing all of our experiences living and traveling throughout Europe. We are from what is known as the Bible Belt in the US, which we could...
Yeah, the Bible Belt is basically the southeastern part of the United States, like he has there in the picture. It's not like the rest of the country doesn't worship or is serious about religion. The Bible Belt is very, very strong religion in the United States.
Wikipedia describes as a region of the southern United States in which socially conservative Protestant Christianity plays a strong role in society and politics, and church attendance across the denominations is generally higher than the nation's
average. Again, I get what Wikipedia is saying about that, but it's not, that's I'd probably call that 75 to 80% accurate. I mean, it's not all socially conservative there, and while it does play a pretty strong role, it's because my parents live down around that area, and I've seen it in action, and it's not, but it's partially true. I'll give it that.
Average. To say this had an influence on our upbringing would be
and I didn't grow up in Oklahoma where he grew up, so it might be a lot different from place to place. My parents live around the Florida area.
Understatement, and both Aubrey and I did grow up in and are still members of the Christian faith. The last 3.5 years of our lives have been spent in Germany, which of course is the home of Martin Luther and the Reformation, some of the most spectacular cathedrals.
Yeah, that looks like the Cologne Cathedral. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that looks like the Cologne Cathedral that I did see when I was in Cologne.
In the world, and some unique Christian traditions like all-out bans on dancing on Good Friday and getting hammered the day that Christ ascended to heaven. Although today, Germany itself isn't one of the world's largest leaders in terms of practicing Christianity, Christianity does have a pretty undeniable impact on the culture and life in Germany today. But the impact that Christianity has on life and culture on where we live now in Germany and where we have lived in the US do look surprisingly different. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today in our video. Protestant or Catholic? Differences across the Atlantic.
I could care less what your religion is. I understand about Martin Luther and what he did. But yeah, look, whatever you believe, you believe.
Atlantic. That one didn't work. Be more specific about where I am drawing my experiences from. I am originally from a southern U.S. state called Oklahoma and now live in the southwestern state in Germany of Rhineland-Pfalz.
Yeah, he doesn't live too far from Cologne. Or Frankfurt, which two places that I did visit when I was in Germany.
So truly my experiences in these two regions definitely do not represent the entire countries because of how varied the experiences can be in both of these countries depending on where you are. In fact, the differences across these two countries leads me to my first difference in experience, and that is Protestantism and Catholicism. An article on zdf.de actually starts out perfectly to describe the first difference by posing this question: evangelical or Catholic? And this is a question I had never been asked before in the US, but in Germany, it is always the question I am asked when someone finds out that I am Christian. Instead, in the US, we always hear the questions, what denomination are you? Or which church do you go to? I think there are two main reasons that we have this difference.
And we don't have these big discussions. So like I said, I try and avoid them whenever possible because I don't want to get into a debate over which is right and which is wrong and that sort of thing. I was raised Catholic. I was raised, that's how my parents raised us, and I was perfectly happy with that. And I didn't really learn a whole lot about the other denominations or what are the big differences or what makes one thing one and one thing the other. So, but like I said, we tried to avoid those discussions because I don't want to get into a debate over which is right and which is wrong, or because, like I said, you believe what you believe.
And that is because of, one, geography and the number of Catholics versus Protestants in specific regions, and two, the culture within those two denominations. Data from Pew Research Center on Religion in Oklahoma shows us that 79% of Oklahomans identify as Christian, but of that 79%, only 8% of those are Catholic. However, I can honestly say that my personal experiences also seem to reflect the small percentage actually being Catholic because I only ever really knew, I think, 2 or 3 families that identified as Catholic. However, we can also toggle this little arrow here and see how rather than just Protestant, how Oklahomans identify under a huge...
Yeah, Baptist, Methodist, non-denominational family, Lutheran, Presbyterian, Pentecostal, Episcopalian, sorry, my fault. There's just so many different ways that you can believe in politics these days.
Huge number of sub-denominations.
It also comes with having religious freedom as well in the United States.
And even those can be further divided into subgroups. Because nearly everybody identifies with some sort of Christianity, and a vast majority of those are not Catholic, you would never ask someone if they are Protestant or Catholic in Oklahoma based on the odds of actually coming across someone Catholic, and because you'd want to know what specific denomination someone is. In fact, I never even identify necessarily, or I think said out loud, that I am Protestant until I moved to Germany and I was asked that for the first time. Instead, someone would always identify as I am Baptist or I am Methodist. Right. To me, when Germans ask me Protestant or Catholic, I have answered Protestant, but so confused as to if that really means anything to them, because to me, within the Protestant faith, you can have extremely wide-ranging beliefs and cultures, and therefore Protestant is just too vague. Now, in Germany, you have an interesting situation in that unlike countries like Spain or Ireland, for example, where one religion has a majority and nearly everybody is Catholic, German Christians are nearly half Catholic and half Protestant.
Which is interesting in and of itself. Now, I don't think we're trying to start a holy war here, but yeah, I mean, look, everybody has their own belief system, and I've never been a fan of and I know he's not doing that here, of chastising one or the other based on their beliefs.
There definitely are geographical differences in where these halves predominantly live, though. I'm sure because I'm not originally from here, though, this leads to me being asked if I'm Protestant or Catholic, whereas for locals, the assumption probably is Catholic, considering that is the majority. But I'd be interested in knowing from our German viewers, how often do you think you hear the question of whether someone is Catholic or Protestant? Or is this normally assumed based on geography and whichever the dominant religion is, they're kind of like in Oklahoma? One of the biggest shocks when we first moved to Germany was to learn about church tax.
Now, that's something we don't have here in the United States. It's a church tax. There would be people up in arms if you had a church tax.
And we had it explained to us that if you are Christian in Germany, then you are taxed for this. And it is a different rate depending on whether you are Catholic or Protestant. When we heard this, we were like, whoa, that sounds like some religious persecution. And why is it happening in a country that has this culture so rooted in Christianity? And well,
yeah, again, that if people found out that they were paying a church tax in the United States, that people would be up in arms about that. That would never fly over here.
This is actually a gross misrepresentation to some extent, as we later learned, but not until after a...
And again, I don't know what a church tax is yet. I'm just telling you that's what people would react if they found out there was a church tax. If there's a legitimate reason or a logical reason for a church tax, then let's hear what it is.
Very funny run-in we had ourselves with the so-called church tax. For those that aren't aware, in Germany, when you move to a new town, you must go and register with the local town hall that you live there now. When you do this, they will ask you a series of questions as you get set up in the system. And one question they asked us the first time we ever did this: are you a Christian? Now, this way of phrasing the question was a little strange, and I think it has to do with at the time we were speaking English, and this was how the person we were working with knew how to say what they were asking. But this probably isn't the best way to ask this question in German. But we had been told we would be asked this, and because we wouldn't want to be taxed additionally for our faith, we were advised to just tell them no when we were asked this. The funny story about that is that actually they asked this and then Aubrey instinctually said yes. And we had a friend who was helping us get settled in Germany who got Aubrey's attention not so subtly and shook her head to remind her she should say no. So Aubrey then looked back at the office worker and said, no. And the lady stared blankly at her and said, okay.
I just renounced my religion. I'm no longer a Catholic anymore. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then just moved on. To be honest, we were then riddled with guilt for the next few years. We felt like, did we just deny our faith to the German government? And also, are we avoiding taxes we really should be paying? Well, it actually wasn't until recently that I learned this isn't the case. So first off, the church tax is not a tax on Christians. Proof of this, there are some Jewish religious communities that must also pay a tax if you're a member of it. Also, not all Christians pay a tax, and for example, members of the Federation of Evangelical Free Churches don't. Which brings me to the other misconception, and that is that this is not a tax mandated by the government of Germany. Rather, the government allows churches to levy a tax to finance their churches if the church wants to. So, for example, the Catholic Church decided that is how it wants to finance itself, so Catholics pay the tax to finance their church.
Okay, that's a little bit different. Like I said, I didn't know what a church tax was until I heard him discuss. Basically, if I go to the town hall and register, and I say I'm a Catholic, and whatever I am, Christian, Catholic, whatever whatever denomination I say, then and I go to the church and I frequent the church, on Sunday and worship, then I'm paying a tax, and that's how they find. Okay, I can understand that. That makes a little bit more sense.
However, the federations of evangelical free churches chose not to levy a tax and instead relies on donations to fund the churches. Now, for the most important question, how much is the church tax? Well, first let's talk about how...
And that's the other thing, too. That would also drive people crazy, is how much am I actually paying? I remember they wanted to build... Now, and we actually have two soccer-specific stadiums or football stadiums in Columbus. One's not too far from me. The other one's in downtown. The newest one is in downtown. And they were going to use taxpayer money to do it. And it was basically 3 cents, extra cents on a gallon of milk, and is what it's like off of sales taxes, basically 3 extra cents. And people were up in arms about that. How dare you? I'm never going to use it, blah. But making a big deal over it was literally 3 cents, and it had the stadiums had to be built by private financiers. So
church funding is typically done in the U.S. So maybe some of you are saying, how does it work in the U.S. if there isn't a tax? It actually works exactly like the Freie Kirche in Germany, and they get most of their funding from donations, or as the church calls it, tithing. Technically, everybody determines their giving differently, but generally, people in the church aim to give about 10% of their gross income based on scriptures interpreted as this is what they're supposed to do. So is that more or less than the tax in Germany? Well, in most German states, the church tax is 9% of your income, but in Baden-Württemberg and Bavaria, it is 8%. So in the end, generally speaking, those in the Freie Kirche and in the U.S. actually end up giving more to the church than this misunderstood tax gives the church. There's also more that could be said about how giving to churches is actually tax deductible, at least in the U.S., but that's information for a different video. What I do need to clear up for any of those at the Fiance watching, in the end, we did not deny our faith or avoid German taxes because based on the church we attend, we do not have to pay this church tax.
Okay, well that's as long as you got it all figured out, that's the most important thing. But that is different. I mean, I said a church tax. If you basically told somebody like my brother who's an atheist that there's a church tax, he wouldn't be all for that. He'd be pretty pissed off about that.
German Bible study for the first time to try out another new way to connect to even more Germans and practice my German. And this experience ended up giving me a totally different experience than I expected. As we were doing little get-to-know-you questions and conversations at the beginning of the Bible study, the group leaders told me that they had been reading through Offenbarung.
Who is Offenbarung?
Of course, we were speaking in German, and they asked me if I had ever read Offenbarung, but I had to sheepishly tell them that I had no idea what Offenbarung was, and I didn't know what they were talking about. In English, they said, oh, it's Revelations.
Oh, the book of Revelations.
AKA the last book of the Bible. I could go into a whole different tangent about how that Bible study ended up going, because for those of you that don't know, Revelations is one of the most cryptic and difficult books in the Bible to read.
Yeah, the book of Revelations, that's where you have the four horsemen. You know, what is it? Famine, pestilence, war. I think it's famine, pestilence, war, and death is what the four horsemen of in the book of Revelations.
Even in English, because of how this book is written to prophesy the end times. As we were reading Offenbarung, those in the group were also referring to other books in the Bible, but I had never heard of most of the ones they were saying. Now again,
yeah, there are books in the Bible that are not in the Bible. That were not included in the Bible. There are other chapters that just aren't in there, and they talk about different things. I do know that.
And I grew up in church, so I know the books of the Bible, and I was so confused that I was glancing around to make sure that we were all studying from the same Bible, because my Bible didn't contain any of the books that they were talking about. It was one of those duh, of course moments that we so often have in Germany, but also one in which I simply realized that I had never considered that books of the Bible would be either translated or called something completely different in German than in English. So, to be honest, I simply just assumed kind of like, I don't know, the English word information is simply Information.
Look, sometimes you're in Germany. Like I remember walking down the street one. You know, I think it was in Frankfurt. Maybe it was in Cologne. Walking down the street, and you know, people are walking by you. Okay, and it's no different from walking anyplace else. But you tend to forget, because I've been there for over a week and I've gotten used to being there. That when I heard people talking, it's like they're speaking in German. I'm like, you come with the irrational thought in your head goes, that person doesn't look like they would be speaking German. I go, why wouldn't they? They're German. That's how they speak. But yeah, you sometimes forget that you're in another country and people say things that are different than how you would say them.
And in German, I thought Revelations would be like Revelations in German, or that Genesis would just be pronounced as Genesis
or Genesis or something like that.
Or Genesis. But the name would still be the same. And to be fair to me...
But then again, think about this. How does the term Deutschland translate to Germany? I don't know. But it does.
I guess this is somewhat true with some of the books. For example, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John are the Germanized Erste, Zweite, and Dritte Johannes. Or Esther is Esther. However, to give you a few of my favorite examples of the differences between a German and English Bible, the first 5 books of the Bible in English are these, but in the German Bible they are these.
Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Mos.
Now, again, to be fair, I asked a German friend if they always only use these names, and he told me that generally yes, but you do sometimes hear from mostly theologians the names similar to those in the English Bible. For a full list of German and English Bible book names comparisons, you can pause the video here to see them.
Wow, look at that. Are any of them this like got Psalm and Psalms, and there's let's see, Psalm, Proverbs. I'm guessing that's right. Wow.
It is no doubt that in both the US and Germany, the percentage of the population that are Christians is sinking. According to the Pew Research Center in 2020, about 90% of Americans were Christians in 1972, slumping to about 64% in 2020, and is projected to no longer be the religion of the majority of Americans within the next few decades. In Germany, the numbers are also declining, and in fact, in the spring of 2022, for the first time in centuries, a majority of people in Germany were no longer part of the Catholic or Protestant churches. And
that's kind of sad when you think about it, that people are losing their faith or losing their religion. Oh, I just did an REM song. But yeah, that's not about, that song's not about losing your religion. REM song, that's a phrase used in the South that they call losing your religion. I forget what it means. I think it's like losing your temper. It's not the same thing, but I could be wrong. But yeah, it is a shame.
Partially based on what it takes bureaucratically to leave the church in Germany, only 10% of registered Catholics attend church on Sundays. Among Protestants, it's barely 3%. There's also a culture of Germans who identify culturally with the church, but not in beliefs, which is evident in surprising data like when asked by German pollster INSA in 2007.
And I've seen people, I guess he's talking about people like if they, do you believe in God? Do you believe in Jesus was the Son of God? Do you believe in that? Yes, I do. But do you attend church? No, I don't. I'm guessing that's what we're talking about here.
17, if they believed in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, only 52% of Catholics and 48% of Protestants said yes. When asked if they believe in life after death, only 40% of Catholics and 32% of Protestants said they did. Additionally, the research institute IMNID asked Christians whether they believed in God. Roughly 24% of Protestants and 11% of Catholics said no, according to the newspaper Tagesspiegel. But even with the declining numbers of those active in this faith, the influence on the culture, and in particular when it comes to holidays, is very interesting, in particular in Germany from an American perspective. In Germany, most holidays are actually decided at the state level rather than the federal level. Because of
there's I remember seeing something that, as far as holidays in the United States, there really aren't very many religious holidays or things that you can look at. In fact, we don't have very many holidays at all. I think I saw something that said the only country that has less holidays than the United States was Japan. And I know in Europe in general they have a lot more bank holidays, which that's what they call them, bank holidays, over there than they do over here.
This, holidays vary pretty widely across Germany, as some states have more holidays than others, and a lot of that depends on the dominant faith, at least at one time, within that particular state. For example, we live in the southern part of Germany, which is historically very Catholic, as I have mentioned. Therefore, Catholic holidays dominate our calendar, but we still don't have as many holidays as the even more Catholic Bavaria, for example. Examples of a few Catholic holidays that are public holidays in our state would be Corpus Christi or All Saints' Day. However, in more Protestant states like Schleswig-Holstein, they have Reformation Day as a holiday, whereas of course Catholic regions wouldn't celebrate this day. But with all of that said, it was quite a shock coming from the US to Germany and seeing the list of holidays and how they differ.
Because if you look at holidays in the United States, I mean, I can go through them all. From the start of the year, it's New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, President's Day, Memorial Day. Now it's the newest one is Juneteenth. And then 4th of July, Labor Day, and there's one called Columbus Day, but that's not really, most places are still open for Columbus Day. Thhanksgiving and Christmas, that's pretty much it. Okay, and those are all federal holidays. And those are the only ones we have.
differentiate. First off, where we're from in Oklahoma, we don't have any different holidays at the state level than the federal level, and that's even with us coming from the Bible Belt. And most federal holidays are patriotic in nature, whether it be Memorial Day, Veterans Day, Independence Day,
Yeah, Veterans Day, I think. I said Columbus Day. I think it wasn't Columbus Day. It was Veterans Day.
President's Day, etc., rather than religious. Now, you could make a whole video about why this is, with the short answer being in the U.S. there's supposed to be a strict separation of church and state, and therefore the government should not promote or force one religion's holidays on the U.S. population. But then you do have Christmas Day as a public holiday. But it was still a unique experience coming to Germany, where suddenly every state had their own holiday schedule, and a vast majority of them are Christian-based holidays. And the weird thing was, for us being Christians ourselves and coming from an extremely Christian region also, we hadn't heard of most of the holidays and didn't even know that they were celebrated. A big part of that was due to the fact that they are Catholic holidays, and with us not being Catholic, we hadn't heard of them, and to come...
Yeah, you don't hear about them, and you're not going to celebrate them because, like I said, the separation of church and state is a big thing in the United States. Believe me, there would be people who would literally be complaining about having a day off to celebrate something that they don't believe in.
Back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the video about the dancing band and getting hammered on Ascension Day, these also were a shock to us. Now, to very surface level explain, the dance band is more of a tradition rather than probably actually enforceable law in 12 of the 16 German states, as it is supposed to be a solemn day as people reflect on Jesus' crucifixion. And the getting hammered on Ascension Day is because this is also the day that it is Father's Day in Germany, and that's how they celebrate.
Look, I don't think St. Patrick's Day, which is not necessarily a holiday, but it is something that people are aware of in the United States. We're coming up on St. Patrick's Day. Most people look at that as a day to get hammered, to get drunk. I don't think that's what the intention was with St. Patrick's Day.
Being a man, I guess. To see who made it this far into the video, the random question of the week is... how late is sleeping in too late to you? Thanks.
For me, I'll answer that question. I unfortunately am the son of my father, who was in the Navy for 20 years and is usually up about the same time I'm up. Okay, so sleeping in for me would be like about 6 o'clock in the morning, believe it or not. Every now and then on a really, really blue moon, I'll sleep until 6:30 or 7. But I'm usually up about 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30, around there. So that's for me. So 6:30 is sleeping in for me. But that's me. It is what it is. But hey, this was great. American versus German Christianity. Like I said, I try to avoid politics and religion. This was religion. It's not, church tax and everything like that. This is fascinating. This is why I do these videos. I love learning about new things. Right now, I'm learning a lot about Germany and how they do things over there. Fascinating place. Loved it when I was there. But please click like, share, and subscribe for Passport 2, and as well as Scott Dova's Interesting World. I would really, really appreciate it. And I know they would as well. But have a good rest of your day, and thanks for watching.